Hello and welcome to The Agenda on Labour Social with me and Phil Moorhouse in the corner. How you doing, Phil?
I'm all right.
You're all
Thank
right.
you very much.
So not much to talk about again this week.
Yeah.
It's been quite quiet.
I'll go through the two sort of bits of breaking news. There's apparently supposed to be a big breaking story later today. I suppose the three things that have emerged today is Boris Johnson is going to be writing for the Daily Mail on a fairly hefty salary. He was paid £250,000 a year to write a column for the Daily Telegraph. As far as I know, it was one column a week some years ago. Obviously, inflation and the fact that his ego is also inflated after having been a former prime minister now. We are told it is a large six-figure sum. So over $500,000 a year for writing one tawdry thing a week. And of course, the first one will be out tomorrow. I will actually review it because there'll be no surprises. It will be the start of his summer campaign of revenge. He's going to stoke a civil war there. Second bit of news is the Tory Selby candidate, because Selby and Ainsley's coming up 5 weeks yesterday. So, 20th of July, the two by-elections. And the Tory candidate was pro-fracking, which is a stunningly bad move because it's very unpopular there. Selby particularly.
I thought people loved fracking. I thought they loved getting bubbles in the water and all kinds of
little earthquakes now
maladies
and then. Who doesn't want their house to move 6 inches to the left now and then? Yeah. So he stepped down. He's citing family emergency. It might be genuine, so I'm not going to poke fun. But and then the other bit of news is that Boris Johnson has announced, it's been announced that he's privately told his allies not to vote against. Now, I'll tell you what's going on.
He has dumped them, right? This is brilliant.
He's actually, Rishi Sunak will be pleased about it because it means it won't have to go to a vote. But I'll tell you why he's done it. Boris Johnson he's not done this to help Rishi Sunak out. He's going to be attacking Rishi Sunak all summer, right? He's done it because there were probably going to be about 10 vote against it and he'll look like a proper Charlie. He's supposed to be this great leader who won. So all of these MPs are like, they won their seats because of Boris, and he'll have about 10 people voting against it and look like I was
going to mention this point because he's hardly got any friends. No. Like, it's remarkable how few MPs have actually stood up. He's like, who's with me? Like at the end of Jerry Maguire, and then no one stood up. And it's like what's his name? The Bassett Law guy.
Brendan Clark Smith.
Brendan Clark Smith. He's the only one, isn't he?
No, there's been 7. There's been 7. He's been the most obnoxious.
He's been the most obnoxious. I mean, there was Andrea Jenkins, I think. She just posted the picture of I'm back in Boris, but that's not that's it. Well, I mean,
Nadine Dorries was going to give a big revenge speech, big rant in the debate. And I've actually just joked on Twitter, Labour MPs should get together, wait for her to do a big rant. Then when she sits down, all call out, "Are you feeling okay?" Oh, no, what is it, the phrase? That's not it, is it? It's how are you feeling? That's it, isn't it? The Holly Willoughby.
Oh, Holly Willoughby, yeah.
How are you feeling? You should just all call it out, a chorus of because that's all that'll be in the House. It'll be, there are some Conservative MPs who are making a stand and saying, no, we need to support the committee here. But ultimately should be there on their own with a few others, all crowded together in a corner.
It's I think it's a fantastic ending for Johnson. I know he's going to go on to other things. I know he's going to write an article and all this, but it's not the fact that he's just been found guilty of everything. It's just the lack of support that he's got. It was humiliating enough when he came back from America last September, thinking he was going to run for party leader, and then it was just like he couldn't even get 100 MPs on side.
No, he did.
Did he?
No, it turns out, because I thought he was lying about it, because, you would. No, so Graham Brady actually said he got the number. Boris Johnson chickened out of it.
Because he didn't think he would win?
No, he knew he would win. It was because, according to reports, obviously it's all speculation, but apparently he was told that if he became prime minister again, but lost control of the government again, and bear in mind, the reason he stepped down in the first place is not because of the tap on the shoulder. It's because that doesn't work with Boris Johnson. The tap on the shoulder from the men in grey suits doesn't work on him. what happened was he didn't have a government. He had about 3 times as many MPs as are needed to fill government roles, and he could not fill government roles. So he had no government. He had no functioning government, so he was forced out. And he was told, if the same thing happens, if it turns out you still cannot get your party behind you, it will affect your earnings potential on the speech circuit, because his earnings potential is directly tied to the idea that he's this superb politician, that he's this brilliant political mind. So, I mean, I don't know what that tells you about the state of the state of sobriety of the people he speaks to on this circuit, getting paid $1 million a head. Well, not, you know, a time. But that was reportedly why he didn't go through with it, because he's got very expensive tastes, our Boris.
He does. Someone just pointed out that in February 2021, he needed this is the budget controller in the comments. He needed a £800,000 loan guarantee. In May 2023, he found 3.8 million cash for his castle. Carol Vorderman needs to do the maths for this feat. I will do a video about it. Wow. But he's earned that talking in America. He can earn way, way more money.
The word earn is doing some heavy lifting there, but yes.
Be given. Be given. Oh, that's one of the worst things about it, isn't it? People like Boris Johnson.
And I bet you he don't pay tax
pathological
on that.
liars. No, he won't.
I bet you he doesn't pay tax on that, does it? There'll be some fiddle because he's earned it in America or something. He won't pay tax on.
They'll say it's a competition win or a loan. The big thing with loans for rich people is basically you don't pay tax on it. You don't pay tax on a loan.
Yeah, they are used as tax fiddles. It's absolutely disgusting.
And then the year after, what you do is you get your money that you've earned that year and use it to pay off the loan from last year. And you say, well, I haven't earned anything because I had to pay off that loan.
Yeah.
And then you just live the life of Ryan.
To yourself, yeah, basically. Or between your company and yourself, or however you fiddle it, yeah.
Indeed. Just a big shout out to everyone watching. We've got Johnny Copperheads out there. We've got Stephanie Wilson. YouTube has it in for Labour Social. I think it does actually. All of our live shows get instantly limited for ads, Phil. Whether you do them or I do them. There was one last week that you did and it didn't get demonetized. I was like, what's the secret? What did you do in that one video? It's not like we're swearing our heads off or calling for the...
I don't get this on my channel. They obviously... They're just suspicious of you at the moment, because I don't get this on mine. Every now and then I get a video demonetized.
Yeah.
But I've not had a live stream demonetized. So
I
don't know.
It's
anyway,
we just keep going on about crypto all the time because we're such crypto pros. But yeah. The desperate overreach is so fun to listen to. This is from Captain Coconut. I thought they would be happy that the workers, the committee, are doing more than they are remitted to. Oh yeah, the overreach of the disciplinary committee. Well, the privileges committee.
The privileges committee. It's all a nonsense. They're like they're saying, oh, this. Well, first of all, it's like, oh no, it's Harriet Harman. It's like, okay, Harriet Harman didn't have a vote because she was the chair, and it was a Tory-dominated committee. Oh yeah, but they don't like him. It's like Bernard Jenkin was one of Boris Johnson's biggest supporters. In fact, Bernard Jenkin, it's not stretching a point too much to suggest that his influence was fairly crucial in Boris Johnson becoming leader in the first place.
Yeah.
A huge Brexiteer and a real stalwart supporter of Johnson, not a pragmatic one. Some of them sort of supported him because they could see the way the wind was blowing and thought, well, I want a seat in his government. But no, Bernard Jenkin absolutely wanted Boris Johnson to be leader. And, you know, he's one of those who has been destroyed by Boris Johnson. And Boris Johnson destroys everything that comes into contact with him because he has no regard for anything or anyone but himself.
True.
You know, I mean, even the other day when he was pretending to jog again, people keep saying, for a man who keeps jogging, he's half getting a lot fatter. But he's going out, and it was like baking. Was it Monday where it was really baking? And he had his dog with him. I thought, you absolute arsehole.
Yeah.
You don't take a dog out on temperatures like that.
Well, one angry pagan saying in the chat, it's way too hot. And I'm sitting here in a hoodie, drinking a hot drink because I live in Durham.
All right, yeah. I mean, it is warm here, but I've got the blackout curtains, which are doing a reasonable job. I've got a fan there, which is fine. And then in my studio, because I've got access to my studio again now,
Yeah.
I've just got the evaporative cooler going, so when I go to record my second one today, that should be fine as well.
It's just my studio's in our basement, and it is just like Lion
Yeah,
King.
that'd be great.
This is where the sun never touches, Simba.
Well, when I lived on my own, it was always fine in the house because I had curtains closed at all times, whereas my partner seems to like to let the sun in for some reason.
Well, it's nice. I'm a lot happier now that it is warm. Like, it's actually, I'm not freezing cold all the time. There was a point in May when it was still freezing cold, and I was almost in tears because I'm like, I can't put the heating on because it's too bloody expensive. Thanks, Tories. But and it just felt like winter was never going to end. But then it did, and now we have a drought. And we have a hosepipe ban.
31 Blaze has come up with one here. I saw this as well. Yeah, article in The Guardian saying a Cobra hasn't been consulted about his daily fail appointment. No, and this is the second time he's done, for all that whining about Sue Gray. Oh, a Cobra should tell her she's not allowed to work for Keir for like 2 years. And they basically went, nah, bollocks, 6 months is enough. But Boris Johnson, he didn't get clearance from a Cobra to do his speeches in America. He wasn't cleared to do that, but he ignored it, thus demonstrating actually it's only guidance anyway. But he broke those rules technically, and he's done it again. He hasn't got clearance to do this work for the Daily Mail. Because for a certain period after stepping down as a minister, you are just like a civil servant, subject to a Cobra like saying, when you can be cleared to do certain work. And it's not that they definitely wouldn't have cleared him. It's just that he never even bothered to ask them. He never bothered to say, "Oh, can I do this?"
But how could he write a column for the Telegraph then when he was still an MP? He was writing it.
I can do it as an MP. This is stepping down specifically as a minister. Like he stops that when he became foreign secretary, for example.
Oh right, so he stopped his Telegraph column when he became.
Yeah, if you're a cabinet minister, when you're a cabinet minister, it's sort of different expectations.
Or is that why Jacob Rees-Mogg waited till he was kicked out of the cabinet before he started his Gammon Box News show?
I don't know, actually, in that case, because that's not supposed to happen anyway.
He's not supposed to present a show on Gammon Box News.
It's not supposed to present news.
Yeah.
Now, we can argue that it's not really news, but nonetheless, he's presenting it as news. It should be.
It is news. They're not talking about the latest video games, mate.
No, I know.
Do you know what I mean?
So he's
Diablo 4. Yeah, let's go.
He shouldn't be doing it at all. That's dead against Ofcom guidelines. But they was going, oh, but GB News isn't a news channel. It's like, what's the word after GB? It doesn't matter whether you think it's a quality news channel. What are they purporting to be?
Yeah.
So like everything's just broken. Everything in this country is broken. It's all been bent to the will of a man whose vanity knows no bounds. That is the state of the country.
Indeed. Really fascinating call in this morning on James O'Brien. He was talking to people who had experienced pathological liars in their life. And the stories that people were saying are, I've had a pathological liar in my life, and the experiences were just so similar. Even the lies were similar, the stuff that they make up, and the fact that they believe it. And Boris Johnson and Trump are pathological liars.
Yeah.
And it winds me up. The lies don't wind me up so much in my situation. It's that people I know and respect believe the lies. And when I say he's lying, it's not true, he just makes things up because that's the way he is, they don't believe me. They think that I'm the one who's lying and the person who constantly lives in their own reality. And they were talking about them not being able to differentiate between the truth and a lie because anything that comes into their head is true.
Yeah.
And you see this with Trump, you see this with Johnson, and putting them on a pedestal is the most dangerous.
It is, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a phrase that I like there's quite a few phrases from Doctor Who I quite like from the 70s. And it's the very stupid and the very powerful have one thing in common. They don't change their views to fit the facts. They change the facts to fit their views.
Yeah.
And you can only do that if you are powerful enough to be able to just surround yourself with people who will go along with it. And where Trump and Johnson come unstuck is they end up in a situation where they hit the wall of reality, and they've got an entire country, or at least a good portion of the country, saying, no, your version of things is not correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they can't handle it. They can't take it. Because Johnson will absolutely feel aggrieved at this. Oh, David Falcon has thrown in 38 Hong Kong dollars there.
I can't imagine there'll be a time when I found myself in complete agreement with Michael Heseltine over Boris Johnson. Yeah, I felt that during the Brexit wars. I mean, I'll be going to panels and things, and Michael Heseltine will be there, and I'm like, Tarzan, what are you doing here? But compared with the Tories that we have these days, and we were talking about this yesterday about how they're not really the Tory party anymore because they don't conserve. They're not conservatives. They don't conserve anything. They are libertarians. They are right wing, American style, free market libertarians who have a absolutely almost pathological love for or faith. I should say faith, not love. Faith in the market. You got a problem, the market will solve it.
Yes.
You got people shooting each other, what you need is more guns. You got a problem with people burning oil, what you need is more oil. Yeah. And the ends justify the means, and the ends of always, let's make more money for shareholders and ourselves.
Well, this is exactly it. And this Truss is trying to come back, saying, this proves the fact that this interest rates are still rising under Sunak proves I'm right. Says no, it just proves that Sunak's just as bad.
Yeah.
Not quite so crazy, not quite so insane, but still just as bad. Because, and this is what makes me think, like, I would still say, I am still of the view that on the balance of probability, I still think a general election next summer. But there is an awful lot of thoughts for this autumn, because what the government are doing at the moment is they're deliberately putting us on a course to a recession and a massive mortgage time bomb next year. And they're doing it. The Bank of England have actually said they cited the specific problem, not as inflation, but as there's not enough unemployment. They've actually said there's not enough unemployment. And what's that doing is it's allowing workers to demand wages that are too high. And that's what they see as the problem, that wages are going up too much. That is the Bank of England's anchor of truth, of where they're basing everything from. The idea that what they need to do is to generate a situation where a load of people lose their jobs. In other words, trigger a recession. And that is what it is. They're thinking to themselves, if we make people's mortgage payments higher and higher, they'll stop spending on other things, and it'll bring the inflation down. It's like, well, no. But that's what they're doing. And there is going to be a recession if they don't stop it, because what they're doing, sometimes raising interest, like if it's excessive demand in the market, you can argue, because if too many people are getting personal loans to buy like kitchens or caravans or whatever, okay, fine. Yeah, you can see that. Dissuade them from getting lots of personal loans by raising interest rates. But that's not the problem. We've got a supply side problem. People aren't suddenly cranking up the heating in summer. They're not going out and having like 6-course meals every night all of a sudden. They just can't afford the extra cost of energy and food.
Yeah.
And it's absolute madness. So if they are going for a general election next year, they're basically aiming to trigger a recession before that. That doesn't seem sensible. And trigger food shortages and more food inflation, which I was talking about in my first video for today. And it's like, so you look at that and you think, okay, if we assume the Tories are vaguely sensible, then you can see how they might go for a general election this autumn and leave Labour with the absolute shit heap that they're leaving behind. Because then Labour will have to deal with the food shortages, the food price inflation, the recession. It'll be on their watch, even though it'll have only happened just when they come in, and the mortgage time bomb next year. Leave them with it all. But then you think, Tories are actually batshit crazy, though, so you never know.
You never know. Phone Box Chicken in the chat saying someone on YouTube called Adam something, that's actually his handle, did some good videos mocking anarcho-capitalism and the libertarian morning mindset. Phone Box, he's well worth checking out if you like this kind of content. His name is Adam something. He does a lot of videos about civic infrastructure and public transport and how stupid Elon Musk is. But he's done a great little video, and it's kind of like a thought experiment of this beautiful, amazing, libertarian, ideal utopia, which is built in the American Midwest or something, and how it would all fall apart really, really quickly because these people have very, very strange ideas about how society works. Because they'll fall out within a week. They'll be at each other's throats after a week because they'll have no one to do the jobs that they don't want to do.
Yeah.
jobs that they see as beneath them, and they think, oh well, you pay them more to clean the sewers, because that's the market. No one wants to clean the sewers, so we'll have to pay more for someone to do that, and then you quickly run out of money because these basic services, the cost of them goes through the roof. So well worth checking out.
So this is what I did when I was very young. See, I got into politics, and I had the Acorn Electron, and my dad got a game called UKPM when I was young, and I caused hyperinflation every single time. I'd be put in charge of the country. I'd manage the economy, and that was my attitude. I would just go, well, people need good jobs, they need good wages, and I would just create this massive inflation spiral, and there'd be a vote of no confidence within a year and a half, and I'd be kicked out of power. Every time it happened, I was like, even in a conservative household, I was obviously a socialist, just a really crap one, even at the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, the fact that people put ideology, I mean, they do it on the left as well. They put ideology above practicality of what actually works to make society better. I mean, I look at austerity, and that seems to me pure ideological. I didn't really help our economy.
Well, it was also known that it wouldn't help. It's not that David Cameron, George Osborne was surprised that it didn't all work out swimmingly. There were some aspects there where I think David Cameron maybe thought his big idea of basically turning the country into slaves would work, but it didn't. But there was also, I mean, he admitted later it was all about shrinking the state. He knew he was lying. It was deliberate. It was an excuse. Because the Tories always look for an excuse.
Ideology.
Yeah, they look for an excuse to pare back public services. And this gave it them. And Labour allowed them to as well. By sort of going along with the narrative, like the Conservatives say, look, we don't want to inflict austerity, but it's all Labour's fault. And Labour, unfortunately, at the time, were going, oh, sorry, no.
Yeah, that's something that Labour need to learn from, never to do again. Hey, last time we were in power, we were awful, but vote for us, please. Yeah, that's not a great line, is it?
They should have just accepted that they ran a crap campaign, and even then, Cameron still needed a coalition.
Yeah,
they should have just started from that position. What they'd done was basically sound. They just ran a bad campaign. Sort your campaigning out. They got complacent. Too long in power. Got complacent. Refocus. They should have been like Rocky 3. You've lost your mojo, Rocky. You need to get the eye of the tiger back. That's what Labour needed to do.
Is that the Russian one? Is that
no? Rocky 3 is the Clubber Lang one.
Clubber Lang, Mr. T.
Mr. T gets beaten by him because he got all cocky. Literally, it was Labour. It was Labour years before Labour did this. Yeah. Sylvester Stallone's a genius.
He beats Apollo Creed. He doesn't win in the first one, does he? He just lasts 12 rounds.
But he still loses.
That was the challenge.
He beats it in the second one.
Beats it in the
third one, he's got all complacent. He's beating people left, right, and centre because he's been given like crap opponents. And then, he's farting about instead of training properly. Clubber Lang clubs him. And then he's got to find his mojo again, and he goes back and runs on the sand, and then he comes back.
So Labour, you need to be more like Rocky 3.
Yes, right. The second half of Rocky 3, not the first half where he's not taking it seriously.
Yeah, well, we were talking yesterday about improving Labour's comms because there's different levels of communications that they need to be putting out. They can't just have a one size fits all because you need to get people who aren't interested in politics.
Yes.
People who have a passing interest in politics. People who are, diehard Labour voters as well. You need a message for them. You need a message for the people who vote Conservative or Lib Dems who might come over to and all these messages are slightly different. It's a bit nuanced, but they need to be thinking like, who's the audience? It's like when you're ever writing a script for something, the first thing you should be thinking is like, who's going to watch this? Who am I writing this for? Or writing a book or whatever. Yes. Who's the audience for our message? And this came really clear this week. Thank you very much, by the way, Yorosh, for that €20 super chat there. I think Labour should concentrate on introducing PR after the next general election, do what they can to stabilise the economy, but their primary goal should be to prevent the Tories getting back. We'll come back to that in a moment. I just want to finish my point about Labour. There was the sudden not the sudden motion. What was it called? The fatal motion this week put out by Jenny Jones, and it just annoyed me, Phil, that it was left up to you and John West on Twitter to explain why they did it. Why didn't Labour put out a video explaining it for politics wonks who are interested in politics?
Things like that, arguably, it is better off someone like me doing it, because
why?
Otherwise, because Labour are then basically saying we're playing a shady political game here because the public don't understand. Because if the public understood what the public order bill is about, they shouldn't have been necessary. They couldn't have got away with it. And I have respect. I've seen some people in Labour really attacking the likes of Carol Vorderman and others who were supporting this fatal motion bill. And I'd like no, because they've just got a difference of opinion. But for that fatal motion bill to have succeeded, you have to genuinely succeed. You have to make two assumptions. Because remember, it wasn't about stopping the bill. It was about stopping Suella Braverman being able to use a statutory instrument to ignore a previous House of Lords vote on the bill. So if the motion had been successful, all that would have happened is Suella Braverman would have gone back to her MPs and said, right, you need to vote for this now in the Commons. And so you're making two assumptions for it to work. First, that Tory MPs wouldn't do that. Well, I think they will. And the second assumption you're making is, for all the people trying to say, oh, this is going to be really unpopular for Labour. No, the public order bill, unfortunately, is very popular. There was detailed polling and several measures in it are very popular. Now, admittedly, the media are not presenting the full works, but actually the stated purpose of the bill is popular. So you're also having to assume that Labour would not lose their credibility on law and order because the Tories would just come straight out and they would say, right, well, every policing failure is on them. Well, police can't. We're trying to get police to attend burglaries, but we're wasting our time policing these protests on the roads, and it's all Labour's fault because they blocked it. Even though it's not true, because as I say, the Lords cannot actually block anything. They can delay it a little bit, and it is a little bit. But that would be the narrative presented.
Yeah.
So it is politics. It's not the easiest thing for
I get
Labour
that, Phil,
to explain.
but I know it's not the easiest thing for them to explain. But I don't understand why they wouldn't, because after reading through John West's explanation, after watching your video on it, I was more pissed off with the Greens for playing politics than I was for Labour for not supporting the fatal motion.
I don't, in all honesty, party politics. Labour do it, Greens do it, SNP do it.
I know, but like for the sake of it wasn't that many, but there was a couple of thousand people on Twitter that night who were going absolutely apeshit about Labour not supporting this fatal motion, saying they'd left Labour and they were joining the Lib Dems or they were joining the Greens. They'd torn up their membership card and all that just for the sake of those few thousand people. I think it would be worse for them to do that. A statement out.
It's actually. I reckon it takes some effort to tear this membership card out. They must use scissors.
Depends how old your membership card is. I think the new ones are kind of quite flimsy. But Doff Cap took Forlock. That's random. Hughes is saying volunteers have started to run local libraries, but the council closed them all the same. No cash from Cameron to keep the buildings maintained and heated. My village library now a pram shop.
That's what they had to do. Like I know a librarian, and they basically had to turn it into other things. And it was actually quite worrying because it was like combined with various others like social services. So you had loads of people like in an area where there were unaccompanied children, and like these people should, some of these people should not have been around unaccompanied children. So the council cutbacks were pretty horrendous when it came to libraries. Just to keep libraries open, they were just co-opting the space for other things, not all of which is suitable.
Just to go back to Yorosha's comment there, saying about they need to concentrate on introducing PR after the next general election. Can you see them bringing it in before the 2029 election?
No. I think it'd be 2028, but no. I think it is the sort of thing. First of all, they need to sort out the House of Lords. Their plans are to abolish it and replace it with an elected chamber. That's going to be resisted. That is going to take time. So that has to be first anyway. And there's a lot to do in the first one. And also it doesn't, they don't need to, they can promise it for the second one. I'm not saying they will, but I hope they will. They can promise it for the second thing, because that way, why introduce it? Because obviously they'd have to use a referendum to do it as well. But why introduce it partway through a parliament anyway, when you can use it to your advantage? Because if they introduce it partway through the next parliament, then that means they've only got one term of like majority power, because they're not going to have majority power with PR. So why not promise it for the second one? That way you get a load of Green and Lib Dem support.
Then would you need a referendum if a government is elected?
If it's in
the
a
party's
manifesto,
elected,
no.
it's in the manifesto.
You don't.
Put it to the test, though.
You need one of those two things. You need a mandate. The mandate is either a referendum or it's in the winning manifesto. So
and
it
then,
can be
and that also means that the House of Lords can't knock it back. That's right, isn't it? If it's
they can resist it, and then you just push it through with the Parliament Act. If you do it early enough in the Parliament, you've got plenty of time to do it, because it's not. You only need it in place for the next election.
Yeah, but that's what they're doing with the House of Lords. So the House of Lords is going to be in the abolition of the House of Lords, or the restructuring of the House of Lords is going to be in the next manifesto in this upcoming election.
Expected to be, yes, it should be. I mean, Starmer's certainly put his shoulder behind that one. So what I would do tactically is I would do as they're doing, because they're on for winning the next one. Then for the following election, although you wouldn't announce it early on, you'd announce it quite late on, in fact. Actually, as the manifesto is going to the publishers, I would announce it. But you would announce it for the next one and then spend the full 5 years, if you dare. So then you've got 9 years, but you've got at least 8 years to spend bedding in your reforms. And as I keep saying, if it takes you longer than 8 or 9 years to bed in your reforms, I don't think your plan was very good. So, and then, although like a coalition wouldn't have necessarily supported you on those reforms, they won't reverse them either. So then you go into coalition with Lib Dems, Greens, whatever you can find.
Yeah,
because the Tories will be toxic for some time to come.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I would do.
I would be absolutely staggered if they won the next election. It's one of those things about like the the Brexit vote. I mean, it was a shock that the Brexit side won, but it wasn't it was upsetting and everything else, but it wasn't that much of a shock. If it was a shock that Trump won, I think, in America, but after the Brexit vote, again, it wasn't that much of a shock. Boris Johnson getting an 80-seat majority, that wasn't a shock at all.
No.
Because they were told that was going to happen by the Best for Britain polling over the summer of 2019. They said, if we have an election now, Tories going to win by 80 seats. Yeah. And they were dead right. They were absolutely, people say, pollsters never get it right. They got it absolutely on the money.
YouGov's MRP polling has been bang on the money 2017 and 2019.
Yeah. So now, where we are now, if the Tories win the next election, I will be absolutely gobsmacked.
Well, we wait and see for the polling at the time, because obviously things change. But Wayne's saying there, why take the risk of PR in a second one with the press, media, and control, public opinion, stuff like that? See, that is true, and that's why I would leave it fairly late on. But do bear in mind, Tony Blair promised it, absolute numpty, and didn't go through with it. But he had all the mandate he needed. Tony Blair had it in the manifesto. He won. He didn't need to do anything else. He just needed to implement it.
Yeah.
He had
the mandate. Was that 97?
Yeah, he had the mandate, and he didn't do it. And again, I can understand why not at the time, because you think, well, hang on a minute, we did bloody well there. We can have another term out of this. But the fact that they allowed themselves to get into a losing position and didn't go back to it was madness, because everything they built was then destroyed. I keep saying it takes longer to build it to destroy. It can take you half a year or a year to build a house. It takes 2 hours to knock it down.
Yeah. It'll take 4 billion years to make the Earth, and then the Vogons come and blow it up.
Yes.
At lunchtime. On a Thursday. I think you're right. When it comes to what they should put into this manifesto going to the next election, I want Leveson too. I want them to go after the papers and put it in the manifesto that they're going to do that, because then they'll have a mandate for going after them. And then, because people are saying, well, what about in 2028, 2029, in that election? What's going to happen then if the Tory papers turn on? They're not even Tory papers anymore. Boris papers, the Boris Johnson papers, the Boris Johnson press, the four families that own 99% of our print media. What if they decide to turn on, they already hate Labour, but that they do everything in their power.
Which they will do.
Yeah. So
I think they'll swing behind Sunak even for this election. They don't want Labour coming in.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. Blair stole votes, promising PR. Arguable. Do you know one thing they didn't put in the 97 election? Tuition fees, from what I remember. I was only 18 at the time, but I'm pretty sure that it wasn't in the manifesto. And I think they were actually asked about it, and they said, "No, we're not gonna look at tuition fees." And then they got in and went, "We've got to bring in tuition fees," because that was part of their plan to get 50% of young people to go to university, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They realised they couldn't do that without bringing in tuition fees, and then they promised not to make them any higher, and then they did. I'm laughing, but I'm crying inside. But yeah, apparently I read that the amount that's owed in student debt has passed some milestone. It's something like 30 billion or something crazy like that.
But it's something like that. It does just get written off after a while.
Well, yeah. Some of the older student loans have been sold off to companies, companies, debt collecting companies, I guess. Resistance is useless, says Hugh, being his Vogon self. I have my towel at the ready and a bag of peanuts and gallons of beer. Muscle relaxant. It's rather like being drunk, Phil.
Yes.
What's wrong with being drunk? Ask a glass of water.
Yes.
Paul Hewen is saying Johnson will only be talking his usual echo chamber, so let him spout crap and split the right-wing vote.
Well, there's also talk again. When you ever say there's also talk, that's all it is. But of Boris Johnson running as an independent in the London mayoral contest, it's like, absolutely, go for it. Do you know what? The right wing are making such errors at the moment. They're conflating Boris Johnson with Brexit, something Andrew Adonis wanted them to do. He's playing into his hands by going, oh, this was not about Boris Johnson, it's about Brexit. And they're linking the two together. And it's like, and I said in my video yesterday, I've seen some people saying today, good, do that, because people hate Boris Johnson. They've turned on Boris Johnson. Get them to think that Boris Johnson is all about Brexit, because then it'll move them away from Brexit as well. Oh, that lying bastard. Oh, yeah, I remember that lying bastard. He also said how great Brexit would be. Oh, yeah, Brexit's turned out rubbish.
And it was rubbish. Yeah,
that's a huge mistake.
But the line has now been that we didn't do it properly. We did the hardest possible Brexit properly in the middle of a pandemic. The hardest possible Brexit in the middle of a goddamn pandemic.
We've still got regulations. Apparently, that's the problem.
Maggie Page dropped in 20 Swedish krona. Should PM honours list be split across
Scotland, Wales, Northern
Ireland? Yeah,
I would just say they shouldn't exist. Don't have politically appointed honours at all. No. You know, if you're going to have honours, I'm okay with certain honours for people in certain
public servants,
public service. So like permanent secretaries or like head of Ofsted, director of public prosecutions, things like that. I'm also okay with communities nominating for like MBEs and stuff. But politically nominated honours. And I'm also fine with the idea that former prime ministers ultimately end up getting a knighthood or a damehood, if not sent to the House of Lords. That's going to be sticky if Boris Johnson doesn't die quite quickly. I don't think anyone, either Charles or William, wants to knight him.
What about Liz Truss? Will we have a Dame Liz Truss?
In theory.
But she was...
The thing is, though, it has to be said, it took a very long time for Tony Blair to get his knighthood, and Gordon Brown still hasn't been knighted. So we haven't actually, the most recent prime minister we've had that is knighted is Tony Blair.
Yeah.
So it takes a long time anyway. So you're basically giving them time to die off before you have to do it. But it would look very odd to skip someone. So I don't think there'll be any problem when it comes to Gordon Brown's term, or even David Cameron. I mean, I know we don't like him, but the public will not really regard that as an issue, or even Theresa May. But when it gets to Boris Johnson, an awful lot of water will have had to pass under the bridge before the public will be okay with that. But it might do. I mean, Tony Blair was only knighted recently. When did he leave office? 2007 or something?
Yeah, 2007.
So, it took about nearly 15 years. So, we've got a chance yet. Boris Johnson will be like 70s before, if it goes on the same sort of thing.
Thatcher was never knighted, though, was she?
Well, she went to the House of Lords. There's not really much. It's a downgrade. There's not really much point in giving you that.
She was a baroness, not a dame.
Yeah. But she was kicked straight to the House of Lords. Whereas John Major, I don't think he wanted to go to the House of Lords, so he just accepted the knighthood.
Oh, so if you got a knighthood, you can be in that House of Lords and have a knighthood, though, can't you?
You can, but there's no point in having both. Like, if you're already going to go to the House of Lords, there's no point in then having a knighthood.
I'd like both, and an Oscar, and a Grammy, and a rabbit in a hat, and a girl I could call her.
I just don't agree with political honours at all. I've never agreed with them. I've never seen the argument for them, because even before Boris Johnson came along, because they're basically rewards for silence. They are corrupt. No matter, I don't care who gives them out.
Yeah,
they are a way of saying, because at some point in your political career, if you're like head honcho, you're going to piss some people off, or some people are going to be able to cause you some damage, and you, just like Gavin Williamson, you buy them off with a knighthood or a seat in the House of Lords. So it is a form of corruption. People call it cronyism. It's worse than that. It's not. It's actual corruption, because you're using it to get people to behave themselves. And so don't. Phil saying, I have more respect for those who turn down us. I think, like, if people want to turn them down, that's fine. If you've got some good reason, that is fine. I have no issue. I would accept an honour if I thought I'd actually deserved it. It's just, politically appointed ones are tainted. They are tainted.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, someone's pointed out in the chat about Gavin Williamson. This is Samuso86 saying, do knighthoods even carry any weight now? And it's a good point. It has devalued in the same way that Boris Johnson and his cronies have devalued Parliament and the office of Prime Minister, the United Kingdom.
Commentators in The Guardian will say that, but the reason they want these knighthoods is because their post-parliamentary life is lobbying for large corporations, and it's it does carry some prestige. So no, they are valuable to people, to certain people.
To certain people.
Yeah.
Hasn't Sir David Attenborough been knighted twice? So it should be Sir David Attenborough.
You can do, of course, because the monarch has extra special knighthoods which they can personally appoint, like Knight of the Garter and things like that. So there are different types of knighthoods, so that's possible. Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's been.
Was he made a knight of the order, or was it a knight companion or something?
Something like that.
I can't remember which one he got, but there are different knighthoods. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, double. Captain Coconut, thank you very much for the £5 super chat in the chat there. We've got any news on the Teesside Freeports debacle? The previous Tory mayor has a lot to answer for. Do you think it might break before or after the election?
I don't know, because I don't even know when the election is going to be. But what I do know is, obviously at the moment, the government are trying to do a whitewash. They wouldn't let the National Audit Office investigate it, even though the Select Committee had asked for this. It wasn't just Labour asking for it, it was a Select Committee. So there's going to be a bit of a whitewash there. All I could suggest is, as soon as Labour coming in, there's absolutely no problem with them going, yeah, National Audit Office, yeah, no problem. Get yourself down or up to Teesside.
Yeah.
So it will break at some point. I strongly suspect after the election, though. I think the government will want to cover it up very urgently.
So what's happened here that we know of? We know that a load of land has been sold to
we
developers.
Strongly suspect, yes,
for $1.50.
Well, pretty much like less than 200 quid for something worth millions. All the crustaceans dying, I don't think we can blame that on it. That could have happened under Labour as well. What seems to have happened there is, because of industrial area, a load of stuff was dumped in the waters. I mean, and it's the actual work that dredged it up. So that would have happened with any investment. That would have happened with Labour or the Conservatives. Yes, it's an ecological disaster, but the disaster was the dumping in the first place. And I don't know who's responsible for that, or even if they would have even realised. But in terms of the dodginess here, it is basically classic Tory asset stripping. It's like, oh, the country owns this. Oh, Dave down the pub, do you want it? Yeah, I'll have it.
Yeah.
Give us £2 then for the slot machine.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Maggie Pie, thank you very much for the 20 Swedish krona. The UK has gone on a bender on the global stage. You can say that again. It's midlife crisis. This is Britain's midlife crisis. It's the equivalent of having an affair and buying a Ferrari. Only, we've burnt down our house because we don't like the colour of the wallpaper. And now we're sort of homeless in the world, and we don't have many good trade deals, and everything is getting more expensive for some reason. Almost like we haven't got any good trade deals. That would make things cheaper otherwise. Yeah. George has just dropped £2 in. Are we legally obliged to address a knight as sir? I don't think so. No,
not so. Many of them don't even expect you to, or even want you to in some cases.
Yeah. But doesn't Alan Sugar? He likes to be called Lord Sugar. He doesn't like to be called Alan.
I don't know. But again,
I'll call him Alvin. People hate it when you get names wrong.
Call him Sid James. A number of times someone's written an article about him and put a picture of Sid James in. Or vice versa. You might not mind the comparison, I don't know, but
They've never been seen in a room together, have they? Not enough attention was paid to the fact Martin Reynolds of the Bring Your Own Bottle Garden Party got an honour. That's from Christopher Bowles. Also, Jack Doyle, who was the spin doctor in number 10 at the time of the parties, he's got a gong. He got an OBE. That's.
I'm not sure there's anyone apart from some MPs. I don't think there's anyone on the list that wasn't partying. I think they're his party crowd. I'm not sure.
Wow.
Or there's possibly the hairdresser, the parliamentary hairdresser. She may be the only one. I mean, apart from the MPs, I don't think Jacob Rees-Mogg, he doesn't seem the type to be having parties. And I'm quite prepared to believe
he's into his illegal raves, apparently, J-Dog. He likes to turn up in a forest with a big,
Well, at least there's plenty of ventilation in a forest. I mean, my partner's actually had COVID recently. She got it last week. And I have kept free of it just because we've just been having the air purifiers on everywhere.
Yeah.
And obviously being summer, it's easier to keep some doors open as well. So I've gotten away with that. That's good.
Yeah.
So she's now testing negative, so she's gotten away with that.
Okay.
So I am yet to contract COVID. I'm still getting away with it.
Oh, you've not done it yet? You know had the vid.
No,
it's pretty miserable. It messes with your brain. Big shout out to Fruitback Cat out there for £5 super chat. Just a beer for Graham because he said he was skint. Thank you so much. I am, and that is very much appreciated. Nick Wilson says, "I do. Do I have to call Ian Botham Lord Botham, or can I still keep calling him a creepy pervy? See you next Tuesday."
Beefy. That was his nickname. He was cricketer. Beefy Botham.
Yeah,
he'll probably be fine with that.
Famous for once tweeting a picture of his own. Alan Parr said, "We dumped Margot Robbie EU to shack up with Anne Widdecombe, CPTPP, and now we have to buyer's remorse." But we don't want to admit it.
Well, that's the problem at the moment. There's a lot of people in this country did a lot of damage with their support for Brexit. It did split families up. It was like back to the English Civil War type of family upheaval. Like my partner cannot even, she gets on with the mum and she wants to get on with the mum. So she bans her from talking about politics. Apparently, Sarah says whenever her mum tries to talk about politics, she says, that's enough tea for now. She's basically code for shut up.
I find it so difficult not to talk about it, Phil, like with people, especially people I know who voted for it, because it's like, I just want to say, do you have any idea what you've done? Because the ones who still think it's a good idea, I get a bit like, especially with my family who voted for it, I get quite offended that they listened to Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson, people that they don't know, people that were thick, people that wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire, and they listened to them over me. And that, like, I'm not all about my ego or anything, but it was quite sort of upsetting for me that they had more respect for these gobshites on the TV that they don't know than their own nephew or grandson or whatever connection I am to them, who has got a degree in politics and has been to every country in the world. They're like, no, Graham, but what you don't understand is, and then they'll trot out a line from the Daily Mail and my brain's exploding. And I still to this day, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to have the relationship with that. You know, people are like.
See, I think that's a shame. I would try very hard, because ultimately we need those people to sort of feel that, rather than be mad at them, we need those people to feel that actually. And if we want to do the James O'Brien thing, you know, you were conned. It was a smart, slick operation to con you through the cunning use of the German car industry will come to our rescue. Then okay, whatever. Or that we'll be able to replace our trade with people right next door with people in where was going to trade with us. New Zealand, great.
New Zealand.
And, you know, it's, you know, if people want to do that, though, I'm fine with it, because the sooner people can feel that they can say, that they can come up with an ego-saving way of saying that they were wrong, or that because that's the usual thing that you try and do. Circumstances have changed. Like Labour at the moment, for example, they're not, you know, they don't come out with a line of you were wrong to vote against us in 2010, 2015, 2017, 2019. Because so what you're saying is, oh yeah, we hear what you said then, but we are now different. That's the game you have to play. So you're not saying that voters are stupid. You're saying that circumstances have changed and now you're going to change your vote. Yeah. So whatever it is that unlocks that, the sooner it happens, the sooner we can actually move on properly. And however that has to work. We can't just wait for all the Brexiteers to die. You know, so we have to sort of, you know, I would like to make it easier. And so I save my scorn for the snake oil salesman that sold it, rather than I occasionally poke fun at the people who voted for it.
I just find it really difficult sort of addressing it with people, because they have so much emotional investment in Brexit. Like, this is the one time in their life that they felt like they actually had an effect on the nation's politics.
Quite a lot of them, it's the first time they ever voted for anything, and they've not voted for anything since.
Yeah.
And you know, you're basically saying to them, the one time you choose to vote, you throw the country down the toilet. Well done. People don't want to
That's what I do say to them, Phil.
People don't want to be told that. Yeah. It's not good for the ego.
Well, Samuso 86 says, it's hard not to talk about it. Yes, I always regret bringing it up. It hurts when they'd rather listen to the Daily Mail and the government than me, but it's like poking a hornet's nest. That's exactly how I feel. Exactly how I feel about it. You know, it hurts. A genuine, like, you know, it feels like something has happened that's awful in your life, and you're telling your relative about it. Someone who should just naturally be on your side, and they accuse you of making it up. You're lying, and this other person that they don't know, never met, they're the ones telling the truth. And it's like, why would you choose them over me? Oh yeah, that's anyway. A man named Kay says, yes, finally caught up the stream live, finally. Too bad I'm still in work. Sorry. Fruitback Cat says, realistically, anyone who thinks they haven't had it by now, but actually had it, but is one of the 40% or so that have no symptoms.
Yeah, no, Patrick was saying I was a super spreader as well. I have been testing this last week, though, so I have been testing negative.
If you are a super spreader, can you go to the local Conservative club?
There's no point now, because, as I say, my constituency's been broken up. I'm going back to sunny Doncaster, which is now a city. Is now a city.
In your face, Reading.
Because I kept moaning about it. When they made it a city, whenever it was, I can't remember now, last year. And, you know, I heard that the new cities have been announced. And, you know, you've got to bear in mind, I've gone through seeing the tiniest towns that are no bigger than the pissing village I grew up being made a city. And I'm thinking,
Durham?
Not.
How is Durham a city?
Durham's
it's only
historic.
got one road. It's only got one road.
Yeah. Well, so's Leicester. I went once time. I was going to the National Space Centre in Leicester for some training, and I was stuck there I was just stuck in a queue for an hour and a half, and it was because a van had basically blown up. Not like, you know, exaggerating a bit, but it gone a bit squiffy, and because there's only one road into Leicester, it just knackered everything.
And Leicester got made the city, did it?
Well, Leicester's a city. I mean, Leicester's been a city for a long time. But, there was
Yeah.
proper tiny ones. I mean, when I was at university, and I was raging about this even at university, I was a flatmate from Stoke and a flatmate from Derby. They were both cities. And they go, oh, Doncaster is really small. I said, no, it's actually the pissing largest borough in England.
Yeah.
We looked up the populations, and it was larger than Stoke and Derby put together. And they just didn't understand it, because they thought, as you would when you're growing up, oh, you've got a village which is quite small, and then you've got a town which is larger, and then you've got a city which is even bigger. You just think it's size-wise, but it's not.
It's not.
They weren't making Doncaster a city because it would cost too much. So they made these pokey little town cities whenever the Queen reached another milestone, because it would be cheaper to do it. But it is finally a city, which means they can now build the new parliament there. It's fine.
Really? Oh, and Donny. Okay. Stephanie says,
very good. It's nice and central. All those poor bastards from Scotland having to schlep all the way to London. We should separate our political and financial. That's going to be my maiden speech if I become an MP.
Liverpool.
Right?
Liverpool all the way.
No. That's
if we can do Eurovision.
The transport links are really poor.
To Liverpool, you're kidding me, aren't you?
Doncaster's really central. Everywhere goes through Doncaster.
Yeah, but it's Doncaster. Stephanie says Durham is a city because it has a cathedral. Yes, Liverpool has two, which makes it a double city.
All right then.
Yeah.
So, but we've got a hedge in the shape of St. George outside our church. It might be a cathedral now. Maybe it's a cathedral. I don't think it is. I think it's just St. George's Church. But there's a hedge in the shape of St. George.
Well, Manchester Cathedral is surprisingly tiny. Like it just looks like a parish church. It doesn't look like a cathedral at all. But apparently Manchester's a city.
Manchester is a city.
I know, apparently. I don't think it should be. I think Salford should be the city. Salford's a city as well. They're sort of like mashed into each other. Cities used to be defined by the presence of a cathedral. St. David's in Wales is barely a village, but because of its cathedral, it's been a city for centuries. There you go.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, like that's what I mean about historic ones that have been cities for a very long time. Obviously, population growth has not been consistent, so they might have been relatively large at the time.
Yeah. Liam's pointing out they didn't finish Paddy's wigwam. They did. They just didn't finish it to the original designs, the Lutyens designs, which would have been amazing. And they just they threw something up literally in the 1960s, made of concrete and glass. And yes, but it was the 60s. The mad thing is that the older looking cathedral actually opened later than the modernist one. There you go. Cities and cathedrals. How did we get here from Boris Johnson?
I forget now. I do this.
But yeah, so just before we go, because it's 2:00 now. So what do you think's next? What are your predictions of what Rishi Sunak's going to do next? Because I noticed that he has announced the by-elections.
Yeah.
They've set them up so they are in the last week of Parliament. Before the summer recess.
Yes, so he won't have to go into Parliament.
Yeah, he won't face Parliament. He won't face Prime Minister's questions after the by-elections. Do you think that's quite telling? I think that's quite telling.
Well, I was wondering last night. I actually, in all honesty, don't know when the earliest was they could move them, because obviously there's got to be a campaign. So it might well be that the 20th of July, because that's 5 weeks, it might be that that's the quickest they could actually do it.
Yeah.
If so, then fine. It's just what it is. If not, if they could have done it a week earlier, then I think it is telling.
Yeah.
But we'll just have to see. But I've got reasonable hopes. Uxbridge and South Ruislip, I think the Tories are playing a good game plan with that. I think they've got a sensible game plan, but Labour should win that. They've already been campaigning there for some time because they already had their candidate, Danny Beales, in place.
Yeah.
They've also now selected the candidate for Selby and Ainsty, who's a young lad by the name of Keir. It was actually quite funny because I was reading all the things. Oh, Keir's going to deliver for the people of Selby and Ainsty. I think, is he? Is he moving? It's a different Keir. Forgotten his surname now. But it's a young lad.
Don't use the word delivering, though. The Tories have co-opted that word and rendered it meaningless. We're delivering. We're not delivering. We're delivering.
Yeah.
Delivering like Hermes delivers. They just throw it over the garden wall.
They are. I mean, they're every now.
Every
because they rebranded. But I'll tell you something. We're fine with them because our local every courier is really good, and she will deliver it to you. If you don't answer the door, she will get it to you.
That's good.
But usually they're still rubbish.
Quick shout out to Maggie Pie there, 20 Swedish krona. I have a solution to Brexit: Aussie garden bridge. Or it could be a garden tunnel. Maybe we could just dig a tunnel to Australia through the Earth's core.
I used to have to do questions about that at university.
What about the Aussie garden bridge?
No, about digging a tunnel through the Earth's core because gravity would have some very strange effects.
Yes, you could jump into the hole, couldn't you? And then by the time you slowed down on the other side, you'd actually pop out the other side.
You won't go out the other side. You
just sort of get to nearly the outside, and you wouldn't quite.
Yeah, back you'd go. In a decaying thing until you ended up right in the centre.
All right. Well, listen. We'll call it a day there. Call it a week. What a week! We haven't even mentioned Trump and the fact that he was in bloody court this week.
But he was only there to say he doesn't think he's guilty anyway. And he's been released on bail. There's various bail conditions. I think one of the bail conditions is not allowed to go near a load of people and call them arseholes or something.
Yes. Yeah. Anyone involved in the trial, he's not allowed to talk to them. Anyone. Yeah. But he will, because he just doesn't. He lives
because he doesn't think the rules apply to him. We don't need to talk about Trump. We have our own Trump.
And whether he actually has his Secret Service profile, they'll keep him in the country. Yes. But if it was you or me who was done for withholding government documents, we would be held not at our own left to our own devices. We would be in a jail somewhere.
I don't want to make a big thing of this because he is an arsehole, but people have pointed out that Julian Assange is being essentially held on some of the same charges, but way fewer of them.
Yeah. Same attitude, mate. I think that he's a bit of a knob, and arguably he helped Trump get into power, hoping that Trump would help him out once Trump was president. You dance with the devil, mate. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. It is. This isn't like whataboutism, because it's looking at exactly the same crime and going, okay, let's make the crime whatever it is. Let's make the punishment equal to everyone, no matter how rich they are and how much money they have.
But it's not.
It's not the way it works, unfortunately. But I like to think that Boris Johnson and Trump have effed around, and now they've found out.
Well, Trump seems to have. It seems. I mean, there can be no doubt he's going to be convicted of something fairly serious. We've seen the photos, and there was there was even a photocopier in there.
I know.
He's piled up classified, sensitive documents, top secret documents in a bathroom. And who puts a photocopier in a bathroom, let alone secrets? Who puts top secret files and a photocopier together in a bathroom without anything dodgy going on?
I saw footage of someone showing that photo to a Trump supporter, and the Trump supporter saying, that looks like Joe Biden's bathroom.
Yeah.
You're like, what? That was the first thing that came into their head. It was like, I know my bathrooms of my, presidents.
Well, I mean, that's not even a particularly well informed one, because the response they get sent to them on their memo is supposed to be, what about Hunter Biden's laptop?
Yeah. And I still don't understand and they call it that they're using the term Biden crime family now, which is kind of stuck in the same way.
It's how they are. I mean, they
Hillary
are
stuck. Why don't we refer to Trump as the crooked crime, the Trump family? Do you know what I mean? Like the mafia, the Trump mafia family. Why don't we talk about them like that? Because he's the one who put his own son-in-law and his daughter into positions of power in the government.
Well, it's the Trump Family Foundation that fiddled all that money as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the
Trump crime family.
They're even more partisan than we are, and they have guns. So it's slightly more. They've got certain checks and balances in America that we don't have, but the general political situation, if anything, is even worse, I think.
Indeed. Yeah. Viv is pointing out that Trump, Farage, and Assange have definite connection over the WikiLeaks dumps.
Oh yeah.
And Putin, don't forget, Vladimir Putin. Yeah. Don't leave old Vlad out the equation. Anyway, so we will be back after the weekend. We'll be back on Monday morning at 9:30 for another morning brew. And Phil, you're going to be doing another video today.
Yeah.
You got another one?
Yes, I will be doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So check out Phil's channel, A Different Bias, which I'm sure you all already subscribed to. But thanks very much for the chats and the super chats. Thanks to all the YouTube members and patrons out there for Labour Social. We'll be back next week. And until then, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome,
See you later.
Goodbye.